Part 1, The Hidden Relic and the Two Gears of Mind. Part 1, Section 1, Introduction, The Ancient Shadow in Your Soul. Have you ever walked down a modern city street and suddenly found an ancient Greek column buried in the pavement? This is exactly how it feels to discover that your modern psychological conflicts are identical to the legend of Oedipus. Jung begins this journey by bridging the gap between our busy, ephemeral present and a higher coherence in human history. He argues that the incest fantasy, which was identified by Freud, is actually the root of ancient drama, specifically the Oedipus legend. We often believe we are different or more moral than the ancients, but Jung says this is a vain illusion. There is an indissoluble common bond that binds us to people of antiquity through elementary human conflicts. This introductory section explains that by looking through the buried strata of our individual souls, we can find the living mind of ancient culture. Jung intends to use psychoanalytic knowledge to unlock historical problems, just as historical materials can shed new light on our private problems. He warns the reader that every act and expression has its own meaning, which is determined by our inner feelings and wishes. This isn't just a book for casual reading. It is a mind capable of yielding the greatest riches for those willing to face their naked soul. We must realize that every individual is, to a large extent, the determiner of their own destiny. Part 1, Section 2, Concerning the Two Kinds of Thinking. Did you know your brain has two completely different ways of working, one for the world and one for your dreams? The first gear is called directed thinking. This is logical, it's exhausting, and it uses words to communicate. It's a modern acquisition that we use for science and for adapting to reality. When we use directed thinking, we are essentially thinking for others. The second gear is fantasy thinking. This is effortless and moves in images rather than words. This kind of thinking turns away from reality and sets free our subjective wishes. Jung makes a revolutionary claim here. Our dreams are the myths of the individual, and myths are the mass dreams of entire nations. The ancient spirit did not create science. It created mythology, which is a world of subjective fantasies similar to the mind of a child. Every time we become tired or bored, our directed thinking stops, and we fall back into this ancient, mythic world. This infantile thinking isn't lost. It remains as a re-echo of the prehistoric within our unconscious minds. When we stop compelling our thoughts along a definite track, we let them float according to their own gravity. This is why we spend half our lives in a state of dreaming or fantasy thinking. Understanding this allows us to decode the mysterious exterior of our dreams. Part 2, The Miller Case and the Hymn of Creation. Part 2, Section 1, The Miller Fantasies. Can your unconscious tell the story of your life before you even realize you're in love? Jung introduces us to Miss Frank Miller, an American woman whose unusual suggestibility provides a window into the soul. She has an extraordinary faculty for identifying herself with others. For example, feeling a piercing pain in her breast when watching a tragedy on stage. From an analytical viewpoint, the theater is actually an institution for treating a mass complex. By identifying with the characters, we allow our own hidden complexes to find a solution through the play. Miss Miller's fantasies are not just random images, they tell the hidden history of her love. Jung notes that she identifies with a dying hero because she senses a sudden end to her own erotic feelings. She even imagines herself as an Egyptian statue, stiff, wooden, and impassive, as a defense against her own physical sensations in a bath. This chapter shows that, when the libido is not applied to reality, it dams up and takes possession of random impressions. Her fantasies are essentially the auto-revelation of her own libido. Part 2, Section 2, The Hymn of Creation. A single voice singing in the night can trigger a vision of the entire universe being born. Miss Miller describes a state of introversion while on a ship, where the world loses its reality and dreams become truth. During a night watch, a ship's officer sings a song that leaves a deep erotic impression on her, though she tries to undervalue it. This denied emotion reappears as a religious hymn of creation, where God is praised as the creator of sound, light, and love. This is the law of the return of the complex. Denied feelings reappear in symbolic form. The officer is transformed by her unconscious into a god of sound. Jung reveals that her poem is actually connected to the fall of man in paradise, showing that her desire feels like a lost paradise or a satanic temptation. By turning her longing into a religious pose, she plays hide-and-seek with herself to avoid the pain of her reality. Her reference to Job shows she feels she is suffering under superhuman forces. Ultimately, the night singer becomes the eternal creator in her mind as a way to replace her lost father transference. Part 3, The Moth and the Golden Sun of Libido. Part 3, Section 1, The Song of the Moth. Why does a moth fly into a flame, knowing it will die? Miss Miller produces a second poem, The Moth to the Sun, which symbolizes her passionate longing for God. Jung explains that God is actually the name for a complex of representations grouped around a strong feeling of libido. When we honor God or the sun, we are actually honoring our own vital force and deepest impulses. However, this desire is a double-edged sword. It is both the source of beauty and the cause of destruction. Just like the hero Faust, the moth that gains one raptured glance and then dies represents a kind of self-murder of the personality. To be fruitful and follow desire often feels like destroying oneself, because the new generation eventually takes power from the old. This creates a fear of death that makes neurotics hesitate to venture into life. The sun hero in our souls is forever unattainable, causing us to wander in a state of constant longing. The poem reveals that Miss Miller's longing for the sun is the same as her longing for the ship's officer. Her soul is like a mortal fleeing before a mounting deluge of passion. Part 3, Section 2, Aspects of the Libido. Your libido is not just a sexual drive, it is the sun energy of your private universe. Jung begins to broaden the definition of libido beyond Freud's sexual interpretation. He compares it to the will of Schopenhauer or the élan vital of Bergson. The sun is the most rational representation of God because it is the fructifier and creator of everything. In the same way, the libido is the driving strength of the soul, which allows both the good and the bad to flourish. Jung finds this sun energy, described in the Upanishads, as a man the size of a thumb sitting in the heart. This tom thumb is a phallic symbol of the libido, the small thing that performs great wonders. This dwarf hero is a seer and a worker of miracles who represents the creative strength incarnate in man. These mythological heroes are actually personifications of our own libido and its typical fates. The very word libido comes from roots meaning to wish and to love. It is the universal psychic energy that supports the function of reality. Part 4, The Transformation of Energy and the Theft of Fire. Part 4, Section 1, The Conception and Genetic Theory of Libido. What if the energy you use for work and art is just desexualized, sexual drive? Jung argues that the function of reality is not purely sexual, yet it originally derived from the impulse of propagation. Throughout evolution, part of the energy required for reproduction was redirected into mechanisms for allurement and protection of the young. This process is called sublimation, the diversion of sexual libido into associated functions. When this process fails, it is called repression. In mental illnesses like dementia precox, the patient doesn't just withdraw sexual interest, they withdraw interest in general. This loss of reality is replaced by archaic surrogates and ancient fantasies. Symbols provide bridges that allow libido to flow from primitive impulses into the mental realm. This transition to a non-sexual representation only happens when a resistance opposes primitive sexuality. The human mind has likely developed through this discovery of analogies. Part 4, Section 2, The Transformation of the Libido. The first fire wasn't a discovery of physics. It was a symbolic act of boring into the mother. Jung analyzes the ritual preparation of fire in ancient cultures, where the two pieces of wood were seen as male and female genitals. The act of fire boring was essentially a co-display or a coitus substitute. This explains why the discovery of fire is often described as a robbery or something forbidden. The theft of fire, like Prometheus, symbolizes the act of stealing libido away from the mother. Jung connects this to a patient who pathologically bored holes in walls as an infantile sexual activity. Speech and fire are the first fruits of the transformation of libido. Language likely originated at the moment when repressed libido turned to the external world to find an equivalent object. Thus, our highest intellectual achievements are actually emanations of our inner libido fire. Part 5, The Hero and the Terrible Mother. Part 5, Section 1, The Unconscious Origin of the Hero. Every hero is born from a desire to return to the womb and be born again. Jung defines the hero as a symbol for the libido that is in resistance. The hero's adventures are the interpreters of our secret thoughts and our struggle to stay in reality. The Sphinx is a semi-animal representation of the mother image. She is the terrible mother who proposes riddles and stands at the portal of fate. The hero must conquer this fear of the mother to win his own liberated life. This battle is often represented theriomorphically, with the libido as a bull, a horse, or a snake. The hero is immortal only if he can again produce himself through his mother. We project our unconscious into God to regain that mysterious power of belonging to the race. The hero's journey is essentially the myth of our own suffering unconscious. Part 5, Section 2, Symbolism of the Mother and of Rebirth. The mother is more than a person. She is a city, a sea, a source, and a tree. Jung lists various symbols for the mother womb, including the city of dreams and the big sea water. The city is a maternal symbol that fosters its inhabitants like children. Entering a city or a cave is a symbol of returning to the womb for rebirth. The tree of life is another mother image where the hero is enclosed or hanged for immortality. The cross of Christ is also a tree of death and a tree of life. In these symbols, the dead are delivered back to the mother to be born again. Water is the clearest symbol of the maternal womb. Life believes not in death and seeks the water of life. These symbols allow the libido to be spiritualized by finding a way back to the mothers without committing actual incest. Part 6, The Battle for Deliverance and the Dual Mother. Part 1, The Battle for Deliverance from the Mother. To truly live, the child that is inside you must first die. Jung begins by introducing a hero named Chiwantopal, who is on horseback. The horse itself is a powerful symbol, representing the animal unconscious and the libido, that raw life force that must be tamed and domesticated by man. In a dramatic scene, Chiwantopal presents his own breast to an Indian's arrow. This act mirrors what Jung calls the theatrical and childish behavior of the character Cassius in Shakespeare. This tells us that our hero, Chiwantopal, is really an infantile personality, someone who can't bring himself to leave his mother's care. The arrow wound he receives isn't just a physical injury. It represents the sudden attack of unconscious desires. In other words, it is our own repressed wishes that begin to fester in our own flesh. So why must Chiwantopal die? He has to die because he is the symbol of the incestuous libido, that psychological force that holds the dreamer back from engaging with real life. Jung puts it this way: idle dreaming is the mother of the fear of death. If we don't allow our libido, our life energy, to follow a progressive path forward, we end up sinking into our own psychological depths. And there we face the terrible mother, who is a symbol for death itself. Part 2, The Dual Mother Role. Jung explains that you can never truly find the soul sister you might be looking for, because who you are really looking for is a memory of your mother. In the story, Chiwantopal wanders for 100 moons, searching for someone who can understand him. This quest for she who understands is really the infantile wish to be understood by the mother. Jung points out that a hero's birth is often a kind of rebirth, from a second mother or a foster mother. This concept of the twofold mother allows the hero to, in a symbolic sense, become his own procreator. For example, the hero Hiawatha must slay his father, Mudjekeewis, in order to take possession of the mother's power. After this happens, nature itself takes on a maternal significance for the hero. His struggle with Mondamin, the personification of maize, is really a struggle with the nourishing mother to gain his own creative strength. The lesson here is that the hero must conquer the mother again and again in order to be born anew. Part 3, the final sacrifice. To truly become an adult, you must kill your own horse and your own inner soul hero. The drama of Chiwantopol concludes when a green serpent stings his horse, and then stings the hero himself. The death of the horse symbolizes the renunciation of sexual wishes. The death of the hero signifies the sacrifice of the entire infantile personality. Chiwantopol makes a prophecy that a girl will come 10,000 moons too late. This refers to the fact that the original object of our desire, which is the mother, can never actually be overtaken or possessed in reality. This act of sacrifice is the only way to tear aside the sentimental connections we have to our parents. In psychoanalysis, this process is mirrored when the infantile personality is deprived of its libido fixations in order to build a mature adult who is adapted to reality. We must understand that the only one who really understands us is the mother, because nothing in the world enfolds us quite like she does. By sacrificing the infantile hero, within, we finally free our libido for the duties of real life and for the struggles of the world. It is only through the free death of the past that we can have a new morning. Part 4, the Sphinx's riddle and the mystery of the two mothers. Why is it that the mother of a hero so often transforms into a terrifying monster in his dreams? Jung explains that it's because the Sphinx is not just a statue. She is the terrible mother who stands at the very gates of your destiny. The Sphinx represents the mother imago, or the internal image of the mother, which has been turned into a fear animal because of the universal prohibition of incest. To the unconscious mind, the mother has two sides. She is both the lovely human half that nurtures, and she is also the horrible animal half that threatens to devour her son's independence. This fear is the very riddle the hero must solve. He must conquer his own longing to remain a child if he wishes to survive his fate. This brings us to the concept of the two mothers. Jung notes that almost every hero undergoes two births. The first is from his biological mother, and the second is a mysterious birth from a spiritual mother or a foster parent. This dual mother role appears in the myths of heroes like Hercules, Buddha, and Hiawatha. This second mother is often represented by a symbol of rebirth, such as baptismal water or a sacred tree. By having two mothers, the hero is symbolically allowed to produce himself again, which lets him attain a divine or immortal nature that his biological father could never give him. Part 5, the sacrificial horse and the phallic son. Imagine a horse so massive that its head represents the dawn and its eyes are the sun itself. In the ancient mind, the horse isn't just an animal. It is the world soul that carries the energy of life. Jung identifies the horse as a powerful symbol for the libido, specifically representing the animal unconscious that humanity must learn to domesticate. The horse is symbolically linked to both the mother, as a steed that can carry one to the other world, and to the phallus as a source of fertile strength. Because of this, the horse's sacrifice marks a major turning point in the hero's journey. To sacrifice the horse is to renounce one's own animal nature and the incestuous libido. This energy is also inextricably linked to what Jung calls the phallic son. He redefines the sun not just as a celestial body, but as the thumb-sized man who lives in the heart. This is a symbol of the creative strength that is incarnate in every person. Ancient fire-boring rituals were actually seen as koa displays, where the rubbing of wood to create fire represented the generation of this inner sun. So, when a hero overcomes the sun, or steals its fire, he is actually taking possession of his own vital energy. Jung calls this terges, the fiery power that allows him to create his own world. Part 6, the serpent's curse and the dragon of resistance. We have to ask, is the serpent in the garden a tempter, or is it a protector? Behind its flickering tongue lies the greatest fear of the human soul, the fear of death and the poison of the past. Jung explores the serpent as the negative phallus, a symbol of the libido that has turned backward toward the mother. There is a myth where the sun god Rare is stung by a serpent that was created by his own mother, Isis. This represents how the retrospective longing for the safety of childhood can act as a paralyzing poison on a person's energy. The serpent is the demon of opposition that blocks the path to the future. This fear ultimately culminates in the battle with the dragon. Jung explains that the dragon is the son's repressed longing for the mother, which now guards the treasure of his own life energy. To slay the dragon is to liberate the libido from the mother imago. To do this, the hero must creep into the belly of the monster, which represents a night journey on the sea, to destroy it from within. This signifies that a person must face their deepest fears and the darkness of the unconscious in order to emerge reborn into the light of consciousness. Part 7. The Cross as the Mother Tree and the Night Journey. We often see the cross as a symbol of death, but in the unconscious, it is the tree of life, a kind of mother's womb where the hero is suspended in the agony of rebirth. Jung dives deep into the symbolism of the tree, noting that in many ancient cultures, man was said to be born from trees. When a hero like Osiris is enclosed in a tree, or when Christ is nailed to the cross, they are symbolically returning to the mother. The cross is a pregnant cross, a vessel for transformation. By dying on the tree, the hero pays the price for his original sin, which is the desire to remain a child. By doing so, he is finally allowed to be born again into a new, adult existence. This transformation often requires what is called a night journey on the sea. Just as Jonah was swallowed by the whale, the hero must be submerged in the maternal waters of the sea or a cave. Water is the clearest symbol of the womb. All life rises from it, and all life must sink back into it to be renewed. The sun sinking into the sea at night is the ultimate cosmic model for this journey. It dies in the west only, to be born victoriously in the east. Part 8. The Wandering Hero and the Goal of Moral Autonomy. Why are heroes like Ahasuerus and Chidhur doomed to wander forever? They are searching for her who understands, which is the lost mother bond that every soul yearns to reclaim. Jung examines the wandering hero, such as the wandering Jew or the ever-youthful Chidhur, as a personification of the restless, unfulfilled libido. This wandering is a symbol of a longing that can never find its object in the real world, because its true object is the mother of our childhood. We might seek a soul sister who resembles us, but Jung warns that this is a magic circle that only leads us back into ourselves, rather than out into reality. The final goal of this entire psychological drama is to achieve moral autonomy. Jung argues that we must eventually sacrifice the infantile hero that lives within us. We have to stop blaming the terrible mother or the cruel father for our failures and instead take our destiny into our own hands. By replacing belief, which is infantile and dependent, with understanding, we free our libido for the struggle of life and the duty of work. True freedom is the ability to willingly do what is necessary, leaving the shadowy palaces of fantasy behind for the light of a self-determined life. Part 13. The Labyrinth of Introversion. What happens when the world outside becomes too loud or too painful to bear? Your mind doesn't just shut down. It opens a door to a subterranean kingdom where time stands still and the mothers wait. When the libido, which is our vital life energy, leaves the bright upper world of reality, it sinks into its own depths. This process is known as introversion, and it's often triggered when we face a task so great that we begin to doubt our own strength. Jung explains that the libido then returns to its source, the point of cleavage through which we once entered the body, the mother. This is a dangerous moment, a decision point between annihilation and a new life. If the libido stays trapped in this inner wonder kingdom, the individual becomes a kind of phantom to the real world, essentially dead or desperately ill. However, if the libido can tear itself loose, a miracle occurs. This journey to the underworld becomes a fountain of youth. Think of it like the sun, which sinks into the sea only to be born again. In the same way, the mind must periodically dip into the source of life to find new strength for the battles of the day. This mother-child play with oneself can be a state of weak self-admiration, but for a creative mind, it is the necessary labor of producing new thought. Part 14. The Two Faces of the Mother. Behind every nightmare of a terrible monster lies the shadowy image of the one person who once provided everything. So why does the mother image transform from a guardian into a devouring demon? Jung identifies the Sphinx as a fear animal that represents the mother imago. To a child, the mother is the source of all life. But as we grow, the incest prohibition turns that original longing into a source of anxiety. In the unconscious, the mother takes on a dual form. There's the lovely human half that attracts us, and then there's the horrible animal half that threatens to devour us. This is why the Sphinx is half woman and half beast, proposing riddles at the portal of fate. She is the mother of all horrors, related to creatures like the Chimera, the Gorgon, and the multi-headed Cerberus. This terrible mother image gets its power from the son's tendency to glance backward at the pampering sweetness of childhood, rather than working forward into the unknown. This retrospective longing acts like a paralyzing poison, symbolized by a serpent lying across our path, meant to keep the mother and son apart through fear. Part 15. The Secret Language of the Wind. Imagine for a moment that the rustle of leaves and the lapping of waves weren't just background noise, but the very first words of your mother being whispered back to you by the universe. In the story of the hero Hiawatha's youth, Jung sees a perfect illustration of how we introject the world. Hiawatha was brought up by his grandmother Nakamis, and he learns to hear human speech in the sounds of nature. The pine trees say Minwawa, and the waves say Mudwayashka. This process shows how external nature is gradually gathered into the subjective world of the child. The sounds first heard from the mother are transferred to the wider world, creating a sentient reunion with Mother Nature. Jung argues that our later love of nature is really just a retrospective reblending with the mother, with whom we were once wholly one. This primal experience is the sleep of the cradle and the sleep of the grave. When we lift our heads from this stream of experience, consciousness is born, and we begin to separate the subject, which is ourselves, from the object, which is the world. Part 16. The Mystery of the Sacrificial Horse. In ancient myths, a horse isn't just a beast of burden. It is a faithful brother, whose death is required for the hero to survive. So what is the animal nature you must sacrifice to become a man? The horse is a potent libido symbol, representing the animal unconscious that must be domesticated by the human will. Jung points out that the horse is often called a faithful brother because it shares the hero's destiny and even his character. Mythological horses like Sleipnir are clairvoyant and have mantic powers, meaning they can hear words from the dead that men cannot. However, the horse also represents the wicked animal component and is frequently linked to the devil and repressed sexuality. To sacrifice the horse, as we see in the Mithraic bull sacrifice or the Upanishad horse ritual, is to renounce the animal nature and the incestuous libido. In the Upanishads, the sacrificial horse represents the renunciation of the entire universe. When the horse is killed, the old world is destroyed so that the hero can be born into an immortal condition. Part 17. The Stigma and the Arrow. Every desire that you deny yourself doesn't just disappear. It turns into an arrow that burrows in the flesh and wounds you from the inside out. Jung explores the symbolism of being pierced or wounded as an expression of internal soul torment. He draws on the visions of the nun Catherine Emmerich and shows how her heart trouble felt like being continually pierced by arrows. These arrows were her own repressed and unrecognized desires, thoughts she considered sinful, that festered in her flesh. In mythology, the sun hero is often an archer whose rays are fructifying arrows, but these same arrows become deadly when the libido turns against itself. Nietzsche describes this state as being hunted by thyself, thine own prey, pierced through thyself. This internal wounding represents the state of introversion. The libido has turned away from the world and is now a self-hangman, punishing the individual for their own unfulfilled wishes. Part 18. The Legend of Chidhur and the Wandering Jew. Why is there always a story of a man who cannot die, doomed to wander the earth forever? He is the symbol of the parts of your soul that can never be extinguished. Jung traces this wandering hero across cultures, from the wandering Jew, also known as Ahasuerus, to the Islamic saint Chidhur. Chidhur, whose name means the verdant one, is a never-tiring wanderer who has drunk from the stream of life and attained immortality. This figure is a projection of our own immortal part. the libido that wells up from the depths of the unconscious and connects us to the entire human race. These wanderers are often teachers of wisdom, who appear when we lose our life force, much like the fish that Moses lost in the sea only to find the wise Chidher in its place. The wandering itself is a representation of unquenchable longing for the lost mother. We wander because our desire finds no object in the real world that can match the protection and peace of our earliest childhood. Part 19, The Cosmic Egg and the World Soul. In the beginning, there was no world, only a thought. We created the universe the moment we sacrificed our own mother. According to Jung, the world arises psychologically only when man discovers it, and he discovers it by sacrificing the mother. This means freeing the libido from the unconscious state of being one with the mother. The Great Spirit is often painted as an egg that encompasses the world, a symbol of the cosmic woman or the womb. To move from the pleasure principle of a child to the reality principle of an adult, we must break this egg. Jung uses the Rigveda to show that the world was formed from the body of a primal being, Purusha, who was sacrificed by the gods. This mother sacrifice is the act of thought itself. By splitting away from the original object, the mother, the libido, becomes desexualized and creates the fantastic correlates that we call the world. Part 20, The Goal of Moral Autonomy. Religion isn't just a set of rules. It's a symbolic bridge designed to lead you out of the nursery and into the battle of life. But what happens when the bridge becomes a cage? The ultimate goal of psychoanalysis, and indeed of human development, is moral autonomy, in other words, perfect freedom. Jung argues that we often use religious symbols to cheat ourselves, remaining children for all time by pretending that the earth is a mother and the heavens a father. This allows us to satisfy our incestuous wishes without being aware of it. However, this pious pose leads to a fear of reality and a stifling of the individual. True freedom comes when we replace belief, which is infantile, with understanding. We must sacrifice the infantile hero within us, the part that wants to remain in the family's care, in order to build a mature personality that's adapted to reality. By taking our destiny into our own hands, we no longer need to believe in symbols.